tried to warn him.
Hawkgirl is badass. There's really no arguing this. The helmet, the mace, the wings, the voice of the mom from Wizards of Waverly Place, and God's Not Dead too. But seriously, despite being probably the least well-known household name member of the animated Justice League, at least when it premiered 20 years ago, Hawkgirl hawed her way into our hearts from episode 1, slowly but surely showing us her compassionate side and developing one of the most important character arcs in the entire DC animated universe. Which is probably why it's so freaking hard to watch those final few moments of the JL finale Starcrossed. I seriously cry harder at this scene than anything else in the DCAU every time I watch it. Oh man, John saying I love you too, and the music, and oh god, no, Shayera, don't go! She wasn't Batman, who we'd just spent 12 years getting to know. She wasn't even Superman, who we'd spent 8 years with. We'd known Shayera Hall, Hawkgirl, for a measly 3 years, and already we loved her. But why did Starcrossed have such a profound impact? Well, if you made it past the spoiler warning up top, you know darn well why. I've been on record describing Starcrossed as one of the best episodes of television ever.
This is honestly one of the best episodes of television ever.
See? Because nobody saw it coming. Nobody expected Hawkgirl, of all people, to be the catalyst for one of the most monumental turning points in this universe's history. Revealed to have been a secret undercover spy for her homeworld the entire time. But the most interesting part of all of this, Shayera Hall didn't just fool the Justice League, she fooled everyone. The show's cast, the press, the tie-in comic writers, and viewers like you.
We actually wrote a fake backstory for her.
Showtime, everybody!
Engagement.
They can talk all they like.
That means everything.
Don't forget that.
You heard it, folks!
Let's back up a bit. Among the many different pre-production lineups for a possible Justice League animated series, Hawkgirl was considered a couple of times, mentioned as early as being Hawkman's partner in his hero file from Superman and Batman Magazine number 5 back in 1994, and eventually seen in a full possible membership showcase during pre-production on Superman the Animated Series, where she stood alongside Hawkman in Wizard Magazine's November 1998 JLA special. But neither of these instances seemed to take the character 100% seriously. In both cases, she was relegated to a sidekick, part of a super couple that more focused on Hawkman. On the old Justice League Toon Zone fan site, webmaster Carcole observed, "The presence of Hawkgirl in Justice League is considerable. This is the first time that a sidekick has actually supplemented the importance of the primary character. Supergirl, Robin, Wonder Girl, Speedy, etc., they've either died, been replaced, or have been discarded altogether as the characters have gone on to have their own separate careers." It wasn't until the pilot short for Justice League that we saw Hawkgirl portrayed as an official part of the upcoming membership, albeit on a team consisting of Impulse in place of Flash, as well as Robin and a girl cyborg, all present due to the pitch originally being aimed at kids WB. These younger characters were all subsequently removed, however, after Warner Brothers greenlit the series without ever even needing to see this animation. By the time Justice League finally premiered on November 17th, 2001, with Secret Origins, we were already basically up to speed on 3 of the superhero characters: Batman, Superman, and to an extent, The Flash, who had all appeared in the DCAU in previous series. Green Lantern was in a similar boat, as we'd met a Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, in the Superman cartoon, so this show more or less asked you to just shrug off for now that it was a different dude. Wonder Woman and J'onn J'onzz we saw the origins for in this very episode, and then there was Hawkgirl. The absolute most we got about her history in this debut was that Batman, for some reason, knows who she is.
Hawkgirl? What's she doing here?
Which was backed up 1 episode arc later in Blackest Night.
Batman would only say that he's busy.
Typical.
The best we got past this was clarification in the Secret Origins novelization that they had indeed worked together before. So before you ask in the comments for a video all about what happened there, We do not know. Even the people who wrote these episodes didn't think past those 2 lines of dialogue. Trust me, I wish I knew too, but I'm getting a little off track. My point is, Hawkgirl was built up as rather mysterious from the start. In Secret Origins, we hear her speak of her people to Superman.
My home Thanagar is a warlike world. There, one must strike first, or die.
And in Blackest Night, we also get this little exchange.
Back on Thanagar, you were a cop, huh? What's it like there?
The same as anywhere, I suppose. There are criminals, and we catch them.
And what about when you're not catching criminals? Is there a Hawk Boy?
Yes, unfortunately there is. We don't even have as much as a mention of Thanagar again until everybody's favorite episode, War World, when Green Lantern and Hawkgirl get into an argument in the back of an evil space taxi.
What exactly is your problem anyway?
Your attitude, girl. Is everyone on Thanagar as thick-headed as you?
Yes, unfortunately they are. These little sprinkles are all we got for the entire first season of Justice League. Otherwise, we as the audience were just kind of expected to understand, yeah, Hawkgirl's there, she's a superhero, don't think too hard about it. That is, unless you were like middle school aged me and were building a crappy little HTML website about every character and episode of Justice League and had read and collected all the official biographies for this show, in which case you knew from the start that, of course, Hawkgirl was, and I quote, an undercover detective on her native planet of Thanagar. Several years ago, while pursuing some criminals who were trafficking in forbidden technology, she was zapped by a dimensional transport beam. Her molecular structure was ripped apart and sent halfway across the galaxy. When she awoke, she found herself on an uncharted planet called Earth. Using her survival training, she adopted a human identity and learned to blend in with the native population. So, problem solved. I didn't need the show to tell me about her origin. I already knew it. I was a really smart and educated 12-year-old. It was your problem if you didn't know how to read. Obviously, we would eventually learn that this was, well, a complete and total lie. A cover story Hawkgirl held onto for 5 years as she studied Earth's heroes and defenses, reporting back to her Thanagarian superiors, all without the Justice League ever catching on. Bruce Timm reflected on her importance in a 2005 interview, saying,
"Even though we hadn't even started writing her, I've always had a great affection for the character in the comics. In a way, we knew that would make it that much more of a conflicted story, that you would actually have much more of a tragedy if she betrayed the Justice League against her better judgment, if she was conflicted about it and not just outright evil. Hopefully, if we played our cards right, the audience would be sympathetic to her and feel her anguish in the story. It's a dirty trick to pull on your audience, but you've got to do these things. You've got to change it up. The audience is so sophisticated, and they've been seeing these kinds of shows for their entire lives. They can predict story points way in advance, so you've got to throw them curveballs."
Hawkgirl's fake origin was what we the people knew to be absolute fact from the beginning and never had any reason to question it for 49 episodes. In fact, in the second season premiere, Twilight, Hawkgirl even discusses this backstory out loud with Jean.
I tracked the criminals back to their fortress, but like a rank amateur, I stumbled right into a trap. By all rights, I should be dead. Their particle beam ripped my molecules apart and shot them halfway across the cosmos.
And you've no idea where home is?
Thanagar is so far away. We've never even come into contact with the Green Lantern Corps.
With an additional script note for the scene in which John asks her if she misses her homeworld, which read along the lines of, "Hawkgirl stares at him, concerned. Did he read her mind?" This is followed up by a handful of times throughout this episode arc where Jean and Shiera lament about Thanagar's unknown location, that maybe even Brainiac would have some info, as Hawkgirl quickly changes the subject. But why wait until a whole season had gone by to bring this up on screen? Well, according to series writer Rich Fogel,
"We felt the less said about the origin, the better. We didn't want to draw attention to it until we needed it, so there was really no reason to get into it in season 1. When I pitched the idea for Twilight to Bruce, he felt it was too much of a Superman story. So after discussing it, we agreed to compromise and try centering the story a little more around Hawkgirl. It would introduce the big lie that would be paid off at the end of the season. So there was originally a lot more Hawkgirl stuff in this story. But when we got to script, it wasn't really working. At the last minute, we jettisoned most of the Hawkgirl stuff and refocused around Superman. I was happy about this because I always felt it should be a Superman story."
Unfortunately, Rich doesn't have any memory of what that extra Hawkgirl stuff in Twilight was, so we'll never know and I'll be scratching that itch forever. But regardless, over the course of Justice League Season 2, the hints toward Hawkgirl's betrayal kept dropping here and there. Jean was unable to enter Shiera's Dr. Destiny-induced nightmare in Only a Dream, which would be explained later in Starcrossed as an inability to ever read Hawkgirl's or any of the Thanagarians' mind. There was also a sort of storytelling sleight of hand in The Terror Beyond.
This was the perfect opportunity to give a pretty good-sized mysterious hint about Hawkgirl's past. There's that bit where she's fighting Dr. Fate and she realizes that the runes he's using to cast a spell are written in Thanagarian, and she's like, what do you know about Thanagar? It's sort of a misdirect because up until that point we'd been making the audience believe that she doesn't know how to get home, and we think she wants Dr. Fate to tell her how to find her way there. As you find out later in the season, it was really more like, have you found out my secret? Are you going to blow the whistle on me? That was, I thought, a clever misdirect.
Now that Hawkgirl had been well established as a core member of the team throughout the first season, the writing staff could start peeling back the blindfold on the audience before finally dropping the bomb in the season finale.
When she refers to it later in Twilight, she's telling her cover story because she's an undercover agent, and so she needs to be consistent in terms of what she's telling the others. In the first season, we hadn't done a Hawkgirl-centric story, and since we knew this was going to be the wrap-up of the show, we felt like at the beginning of the second season that it was a good time to be able to sort of introduce some of those elements so that we could begin to seed them in.
But why do the big twist at all? Why make Hawkgirl, for all intents and purposes, the bad guy? Well, as it turns out, they basically had to.
Toonami presents a full-length Justice League movie, Star-Crossed, next Saturday at 7:30, only Toonami.
Pretty bad odds.
Yeah, they don't stand a chance.
According to multiple people who worked on Justice League, Paul Levitz, at the time president of DC Comics, mandated that one member of the animated Justice League wind up being a traitor. Who knows where this idea came from, if it was perhaps influenced by the traitor plot from the League's first DCAU appearance in Batman Beyond's The Call. It's not entirely clear, but whatever the case, it had to happen.
Levitz suggested that somewhere in the course of the show we should do a big stunt episode, where one of the major characters gets killed, or one of them betrays the League. Even though this came from his own lips, we knew from experience they really would not allow us to kill off one of the regular characters. It's a real touchy thing. So we knew we wouldn't do that, but the notion of a betrayal was intriguing. The next step is deciding who will betray the League.
And so we kind of, looked at the group and went, well, Martian Manhunter won't really, no, it's like, can't be Wonder Woman, it can't be Batman, it can't be Superman, certainly can't be Green Lantern.
Can't be the Flash.
It can't be the Flash.
I guess it has to be Hawkgirl.
It has to be Hawkgirl. And then we were like, okay. So when the series was being developed, we knew, but nobody knew.
Yeah.
Nobody knew.
Bruce Timm expanded later in his Modern Masters volume from 2012, years after Justice League had been off the air.
From the get-go, we all really liked the character. That made it even more obvious that she was going to have to be the one to betray the League. Because if it's somebody you don't like, then you get nothing. It's like, oh, that rotten person, I never liked her anyway. But if it's somebody you like and have sympathy for, then you've got a conflict. You've got drama.
Ironically, Tim has said before he never liked Professor Hamilton, so that's a little awkward, but I digress. Yes, the Justice League crew knew from day one that Hawkgirl would betray the League, and they knew that their audience wasn't stupid, so they had to come up with a new origin for her, one that would be convincing enough to not draw any attention and give anything away, which meant trying to match her comic book origin. Unfortunately, even a couple decades ago, Hawkgirl's comic book origin wasn't exactly black and white. She first appeared as the character Shiera Saunders all the way back in Flash Comics #1 in 1940, but wouldn't become Hawkman's sidekick and lover Hawkgirl until All-Star Comics #5 the following year. This version of the character's backstory involved reincarnation from ancient Egyptian royalty, something we saw an adaptation of by the final season of Justice League Unlimited. But in DC's Zero Hour event in the mid-90s, Shiera Saunders was effectively killed when she merged with two versions of Hawkman to become a Hawk god. Look, this isn't even the most complicated aspect of the Hawkgirl history in DC Comics, and I really don't have the time to get into it all, so just go watch Comic Drake's video about it after you're done here. My point being, among the handful, yes, handful of different versions of Hawkgirl, or Hawkwoman as she was sometimes known,
Jeez Louise, it's a woman!
There was no real obvious her parents were killed in an alleyway, that's always going to be the origin story we hit you over the head with option to choose. So the JL staff just picked one. Like was often the case with the previous show's biographies, they went straight to Who's Who, the Definitive Directory of the DC Universe, a series of books published in 1985, arguably the most pure, stripped-down, summarized versions of any DC character's backstory, at least up until that point in time, which was typically the more classic, archetypal approach used by the DCAU crew.
If you're going to tell a lie, you want to tell it as close to the truth as possible.
The entry for Hawk Woman, Shiera Thal, reads rather similarly to what we know of the character in the Justice League cartoon. She was born on Thanagar, was part of the Thanagarian police force, and was assigned to capture a group of criminals, here known as the Rainbow Robbers. I can't find a picture of them. Sorry. Notably missing is the aspect in which Shiera is inadvertently teleported to Earth by said criminals, but she does journey with Hawkman to Earth to pursue a different bad guy, where they both establish human secret identities. The dimensional transport aspect is notably similar to that of Adam Strange's origin, where he's teleported to the planet Rann via a technology called a Zeta Beam. No affiliation with the futuristic robot, I'm sorry to say. When I asked Rich Fogel about the similarities to Adam Strange's origin, he replied,
"For the cover story, I think I was more inspired by Flash Gordon than Adam Strange, although they were both essentially identical. The most important aspect of the cover story was to come up with a reason why Hawkgirl was cut off from Thanagar. We couldn't suggest that she could communicate or go back and forth to her homeworld. I came up with this idea and pitched it to Bruce Timm, and he said, that'll work. There was not a lot of discussion of alternatives. There were lots of different versions of the Hawk characters in the DC universe, so it didn't feel like we'd be messing with major canon. Because of our experience on Superman and Batman, we knew that the material that we were generating in-house probably was going to leak out. And since this was an idea that we knew even before we started writing the first episode, that was where we were going to go with Hawkgirl, we didn't want to telegraph it. We didn't want anybody to know. And so the idea was, well, let's write a fake cover story for her.
To reiterate, everybody was a target. No one could know what was to come, and so every single piece of Justice League media had to fall in line with this hardcore ruse. Besides her Cartoon Network biography, every other instance and rewording of her origin matched this fake-out.
While working as an undercover detective on the planet Thanagar, this hero was zapped to Earth by a dimensional transport beam.
Ripped from her homeworld of Thanagar, undercover detective Shiera Hall found herself transported to the uncharted planet called Earth. In order to blend in with mankind, Shiera adopted two identities, that of an ordinary human and that of Hawkgirl. This level of secrecy about Hawkgirl's true nature even locked off as high up the chain as the show's spin-off comic book series Justice League Adventures, with the cartoon's writers never communicating a single smackerel of info to the comics writers. And when you read the comic, this often sticks out as rather obvious, to the point where it sometimes doesn't even line up with either origin, fake or not. Throughout these issues, Hawkgirl has inexplicable access to various Thanagarian technologies, a little antithetical to her supposed lack of contact with Thanagar, like her anti-grav meter or a Thanagarian hawk ship, the latter of which might work with DCAU continuity if you consider the fact that, well, she had to actually get to Earth somehow, right?
I believe she was dropped off in a cloaked Thanagarian shuttle. I'm not sure we ever specifically said that, but that's how it played out in my mind.
Thanks, Rich. It's canon now, no turning back. Going along with the cover story, though, we do see Shiera out of costume in a civilian identity in issue number 20, working in Midway City, the typical comic book base of operations for Hawkman and Hawkwoman, and therefore may just be a coincidence or a happy accident. Though in this same issue, Shadow Thief is also mentioned, who shouldn't be on the League's radar until several years down the road. Look, we'll do a Will It Canon on this comic eventually. I'm reading and analyzing every issue of it and the JLU follow-up on my Tuesday live streams if you want to tune into those. But the lack of communication extended even further to a coloring book from 2003, Truth, Justice, and Freedom, that I and my fellow data boy Maddie both owned as kids, in which we actually see this fake origin play out in art by Jason Armstrong. Shiera Hall was an undercover police detective on her home planet of Thanagar. While chasing criminals, she was hit by a weapon that transported her halfway across the galaxy. Quickly coming to admire the people of Earth, Shiera became fascinated by ancient Egyptian tales of hawk-like beings. Now, as Hawkgirl, she uses her mace and Thanagarian powers to protect her adopted home. And I have to say, I love how the main bad guy here is like a snake person. because Hawks and okay. This coloring book goes on to showcase an aspect of her powers that the JL Bibles cover story also hilariously mentions. Hawkgirl's ability to communicate with birds, something Hawkwoman's Who's Who bio includes as well, but we never see her actually do in the show, and was regarded by the writers as far too Aquaman talks to fish level of silly to actually portray. It just further enhanced and cemented her fake origin for those paying attention. Like me, when I was 12.
They didn't know.
Yeah.
They didn't know they were lying. They thought they were telling the truth. That's the funny thing.
But is it all fabricated? Is there any truth to the lie?
In my mind, at least, she did have a whole life established on Earth, so it didn't feel that weird. After she arrived here, she began working as a detective and helping the police out in solving crimes and things like that, and became known as a hero on her own right. I mean, that part is all true.
So, from everything we know, we can kind of piece together a mini timeline for Hawkgirl, the stuff we didn't see or hear about in the actual show, where a cloaked Thanagarian ship brought her to Earth, she established herself as a detective in Midway City or some other place, I guess hiding her wings inside this backpack thing? And after about 3 years from being dropped off, she joined the Justice League, all to send info back to Thanagar about Earth's defenses, which included her ultra-muscular super friends. I guess she and Batman had a little adventure in there somewhere too, but I do not know what or when it was. The funniest part of this whole charade, to me, even voice actress Maria Canals had no idea the twist was coming. Yes, Rich Fogel, Dan Reba, Bruce Timm, Stan Berkowitz, they fooled us all. And if Hawkgirl herself could fool, like, Batman, what chance did we have? Feed the famished algorithm beast by commenting below and answering our question of the day. Did you know about this fake origin story? And did you predict while watching the show that Hawkgirl would be a secret spy? You can't tell me you did. It's literally impossible, unless you're Rich Fogel or Dan Reba, in which case, hi! Thanks for watching, everybody, and thank you to Comic Drake for voicing Bruce Timm this time around. His channel is linked below. As well as Rich Fogel himself for providing voiceover for his quotes, and Dan Reba for being Dan Reba. Oh, and our esteemed colleague Marcelo Milikai for the awesome colorization of those coloring book pages. Check out the full art linked on his DeviantArt in the description. Like I mentioned earlier, be sure to check out our live streams every single week throughout the week, where we read DCAU comics and books, play video games, draw Batman heads, whatever. That's here on YouTube and technically over on Twitch as well at the link below, though we don't really pay attention to Twitch anymore because we're boomers or something. And if you miss a stream, they're all archived over on the new Pod Tower channel, alongside every episode of the Tim Talk and DCAU Review podcasts, the latest episodes of which you see right here. That's linked below as well. We can't get a custom URL until we get 1,000 subscribers, so hurry up and make that happen, please. Thanks a ton to our Patreon supporters whose names you see scrolling by here, including the infamous Mac, Aaron Young, Cameo Shadowness, Luke Mears, Robert Sterling, and Richard Mon 12. If you'd like to get your name on the list among a ton of other cool rewards, visit patreon.com/DCAU Watchtower and sign up to become a true database. Not the fake ones who say they got zapped into this list by a dimensional transport beam. Nuh-uh, I don't even believe those guys. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on new DCAU videos every single week. I love you, viewer. I never lied about that. Oh no!